we are talking about living by design or default today. Here, let's do this. We'll just be smart about it, okay? Because I have a little story about that. And I'll pick these up. All right. But first, you guys know I love my Instagram. I say it all the time. And I'm always looking for wonderful stories to share with you or people. And so I sent this to Clay and I said, oh, please, can we play this? And so I just wanted to introduce you to Chef Max Can Cook. And Clay, if you can play that for me, and we will enjoy this together.
A little wisdom from Max. If you focus on the known, you get something you already know. But if you focus on the unknown, you get a possibility. You create a possibility by thinking on the unknown.
So I discovered Max scrolling, doom scrolling, and I got lost in a hole of watching. He has these little video clips, and at the end of every clip, he's like, and he has the wisdom of the ages, let me just tell you. He is so wonderful, and he was one of the ones, I didn't want to ask Clay to play too many, because I would have played them all and just let it been the talk, because it's so profound, this little man. I felt kind of jealous that he has access to this. But I was like, how can we get him here to visit us? That's what I was really thinking. I want to pick this little man's brain and celebrate him. But anyway, so he started with this little cooking channel. You can find him on Instagram or YouTube. If you follow me, you'll see me posting his things. But he did this, which was very profound for me. He was talking about anger, and he goes, anger steals your freedom. Anger eats away at you, and it steals your freedom. And everybody wants to be free. He said, the problem is that when you're angry, what's happened is already gone. So you're not really mad about what happened. You're mad at your thoughts about what happened. I thought that was so profound. And I had to kind of sit with it and play it again. And then I'm sure Bill and I probably had a disagreement about something. And I'm like, oh, I'm not really, that's already happened. I'm not really mad. I'm mad about what I'm thinking about, what he should have done to make me happy, because that's what I wanted. And I realized this loop is that really what we're mad about, and what Max said is, you're mad because that person didn't give you what you wanted in some way, right? Either appreciation or, thinking your idea was a great idea, which I'm sure that was my issue, was I come up with some really good ideas and I want him to say, that's a good idea, let's do it. I don't get that too often. Because it usually involves money and some big project that he has to do. But anyway, and then it usually follows with, you never listen to me. And that's when it caught me, right? Is that he actually does. And what I'm really mad about is the validation and the, hey, that's a good idea. And, I want you to be a particular way so that I don't have to be angry. And this is living by design or default, is that we start to recognize, which we talked about, the book, the Ernest Holmes book, which I brought it to share with you guys. So this is the book, the Ernest Holmes Papers, Volume 1, with Ernest Holmes' traveling partner, who really dictated what Ernest Holmes really thought, his teaching was what it really was. And so I just thought that was so profound in today's talk, that you are not angry at what happened. That's already done. Then your body's triggered, and you have these emotions, and then your mind starts ruminating, and then the anger really is tied to the thought. It's not even tied to what happened. That's done. It's gone. It's over. It's what you feel about yourself, whether you feel heard, seen, loved. And then we sometimes can make it other people's responsibilities to fulfill that. And I don't know about you, but I sure can. Maybe not y'all, though, right? No, because you are devout signs of minders, so I'm sure. It's just me. But this was so deeply profound for me that every time something came up, because in a good marriage, things come up, that I stopped and paused. For the first time in a very long time, nothing has hit home like that little man's message for me. You're not angry at anything. You're mad at your thoughts. And I thought, interesting. So Max goes on to say that you're seeking worthiness from the objective world, the outside world, and you're giving up your freedom of the inside world by what's going on out there. And then you're pulled around by it, and it can really ruin your day, he said. And he said, you are worthy. You are love. So tell your mind to knock it off and start living, because who doesn't want to be free? And I just thought, the wisdom of this little man to speak relative truth and for it to be heard. And you know, I say spirit reaches all of us by design. It knows our conditioning. It knows what we've been through. It knows, because it is you, it knows the familial trauma and bonds and addictions and whatever. It knows these things because it sits lying in wait for you to turn inward and surrender to it, to live by design. And the opposite of that is living by default. Being my teacher Reba used to say, a flickering candle, and any wind that comes will just blow it out. Right? Or you hear reference by a lot of great teachers about, you know, being a boat on a calm lake or a rough one, and the boat's tossed about, you know, and it's all dependent on the outer circumstances. So living by design and not by default is taking accountability and responsibility, which is what Ernest Holmes was really pointing us to. He, as I said last week, wanted to undogmatize us. And so we begin the journey to start asking the questions and entering the unknown. Because it's so easy to say, you know, we start with, I must know myself. And so we start to look at our the way we move in the world, how we respond to things, what our instant reaction is, how we feel offended or hurt. And we are drug around by our mind and our immediate reaction and the embodiment of our nervous system. And if we stopped, which takes practice, and pauses, Max says, that you will then let the story process, let the feelings go, which only last about 40 seconds. So the thing itself is over, the emotions are 40 seconds, and then the rumination starts. And that is where we can say, oh, what am I mad at? Maybe I wasn't seen, heard, whatever the case may be, and what is it that I really want? What is the idea here that will bring me back to reality and my freedom, my inner freedom? And that, how am I giving that up time and time again? And so I was cleaning yesterday, cleaning, and I came upon this letter that I wrote to myself in 2012 that says, Dear Angel. Wasn't that sweet? She knew something, that Tracey. But I had just lost my job. And I was just started at Mile High because, you know, the book fell off the bookshelf when I was in Borders before they went out of business. And I didn't buy it right then, but that book was in my dreams. Like, I couldn't get away. When I signed on to work computer, I was searching on the internet, and the book came up for some reason. I was like, okay, I got it. Go buy the book. And then I bought the book, and then Bill would come visit because I lived in Colorado. It was 2008, you know, all of that outer world drama that was happening then. And I had moved there for work, chasing a higher position, more money, left a boss that I definitely feared and thought didn't like me, and I lived in this whole idea, and I was studying the law of attraction and going to PSI seminars and desperately seeking out there a causation for my life. And my boss, the reason why I got a new boss is my old boss moved to Colorado, and we were very close, and she called and said, hey, I need you to run the biggest branch in Colorado. My ego was like, of course you do. And so I went and I interviewed and got offered more money than I could ever thought possible at that time, like 150 plus. And I was making like 46, so it was quite a jump. More jump than my consciousness could handle. I was still living by default. And so I went for the interview, got the job, and then the boss that I feared was like, you're probably not ready for that. You should stay here a little bit longer. And then fear entered the picture, and I turned it down. Yeah. Who said that? And then, of course, the problems with the new boss didn't disappear. And I got sick, and I ended up in the hospital. And when I got out of the hospital and I came back, she had conveniently moved me to this little tiny branch, and, all of the drama of work that I thought, how dare you do this to me? So I have lived the gamut of things in my lifetime. Some very painful, some very joyful, but they're all temporary. So what happened, to make a long story short, I ended up calling my old boss back and said, is that job still available? And she said, well, no, but let me see what I could do. So I ended up in this in-store in Colorado. Bill and I flew. We found an apartment. We really probably couldn't have afforded any of it, but it was the first time that I made a conscious choice. Well, I'm going to do this, and I know if I choose to do it, I'll be wholly supported, living consciously. So we find an apartment. I've never been on my own. I left my mom's house, married Bill, never been on my own. And so I had the bright idea, well, my son wants to move with me too. So my son, who graduated school, my boss got him a job too, and we lived, and Bill would come visit, and yada, yada. And so I ended up taking the smaller branch, a lot less money, because my consciousness, my living by design, really couldn't even fathom. There was so much fear about having that much responsibility, and I let that worm get in my head. And what happened is Spirit perfectly aligned it, because I started at the small branch, turned it around in like 6 months, was moved to another branch, turned that one around, and then a year later I was at that big branch. So it all happened very quickly. And then 2008 came, and everything fell apart, and then I lost my job. My dog tried to jump over a fence and pulled all his ligaments. My mother-in-law was passing away. My first granddaughter was born. My first biological granddaughter was born. And life was very complicated. And so I was looking for a job, couldn't find one. Went back to Colorado because I had an apartment, found a job, and had that job for a certain period of time, and then that one went away. I'm like, okay, Spirit, what are you trying to tell me? Desperately hanging on, desperately clinging to anything outside of my life to make me feel worthy and valid. And so one day my former boss came and she took me to Borders, and there was that book. And so there was someone on the other side of the shelf, and she pushed. I'm convinced of this, although I don't know, my boss said, that book just fell on your feet. But I would say there was someone behind it that pushed the book. And I picked it up and I looked at it, and it just had this, it just really caught my attention. And I was like, I don't need another book, I need a job. And I put the book back. And I was dreaming about the book. Like I said, it was showing up. Just all of this mystical stuff started to happen. So my sister sent me the money, and I went and bought the book. And Bill would come visit, and we would drive around Colorado, and I would read it to him, and I go, oh, this is why Spirit wanted me to have the book, so I could read it to Bill, and he could be a better husband and move to Colorado. And then somebody invited me to a party, and I was sitting in the corner reading the book, and she goes, oh, that's the Science of Mind textbook. And I go, yeah. And she goes, oh, that church is down the street. And I go, oh, it's a church? And she said, yeah, it's down the street. So it's a big dome. If you've been to Mile High in Colorado, it's like a big dome. And it looks like a spaceship. And, I was Catholic upbringing. I'm like, what kind of cult is this? So I decided to go I Spy on a Wednesday. And I met, who I called my stand-in mom, Carol. And she worked in the bookstore. And people had promised me that they would meet me there on Sunday so I didn't have to go in by myself. And so I went in. She goes, bring your box of tissues. You're going to love it. And so I showed up on Sunday, and where were all those people? Nowhere to be found. And so I sneak in. I'm feeling, although I hadn't practiced Catholicism, these defaults are deeply ingrained in you that you should be in a particular place. And so I sit in the back, and I say, okay, you know what? To religion, to God. I just was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to be happy. And I said, I just need to know why I'm here. And Dr. Teal came out and gave this talk on the great teacher, Jesus. I had never heard anybody refer to him as a great teacher. And I was like, ooh, what blasphemy is this? And he started to talk about self-love and accountability and responsibility. And he said that no matter what was going on in your life, that if it was painful, it was probably by default. And I was like, how do you know? What are you talking about? You don't know my life, And I was kind of resistant to it, but at the same time enjoying it, like something was pulling me. And so, the tears came, and somebody was sitting behind me, and they had their hand on my back, and I was like, oh, please don't touch me. I'm like, I'm just visiting. And she leans forward and whispers in my ear, it's all going to be okay. It's just going to be okay. And so everybody left, and I sat there for a little while, and I said, okay, I just need to know that this is the place that I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to be doing, and I need a burning bush, because I don't do little signs, I'm a miracle Catholic girl. I need a burning bush. So a couple of years prior, I had taken PSY seminars. Is anybody familiar with PSY seminars? And this gentleman named Paul was like the intro speaker. And I said, I just need to know. So I walk out to the lobby, and who is standing there from like 4 or 5 years ago? Paul. Like the Apostle Paul, I'm telling you. And I look at him and I go, you don't know me, but you did my intro PSY seminars. And he goes, I did. And I go, I was just asking to be shown that I'm in the right place. And there you were. And he said, and he had his stole on, and it was purple, and I'm like, and he's like, well, who are you? And I go, oh, my name is Tracey, I'm a baker. He's like, no, who are you? And I had no clue what he was talking about. And I'm like, me? And so we talked, and I asked him what the stole was about, and he talked to me about practitioner, and immediately I was like, I want that. I want that. So then that's the second step Spirit gave me, was he knows Tracey needs a good identity holder-upper, like I get to wear the purple stole and, feel that self-importance, and I wanted to be loved. And so I started taking the classes, and little by little, I, in 2012, took as many classes as they took summers off. And I was so mad. I'm like, don't you have any summer classes? And it just started to cultivate. And I started this to prevent me from losing the job that I had, because I worked, for a big bank where I just got to be I didn't really have to do much, just kind of had to tell people what to do. And then I went to a small bank where they wanted me to be a business banker and pound the pavement. And I was like, that was not me. Okay, that's not my zone of genius at all. But so I just didn't do well, and it's okay in terms of their pillars of success. And so I lost that job, and went to see Dr. Teal, and he said, the best thing you could do when you're suffering is serve. So I went and I helped him with classes, and somebody said, hey, there's this beautiful monastery, and you should, I don't know, something's telling me you should go visit. And I didn't even know it was there, and I went to this beautiful place that had healing waters, and there's this big mountain, and you climb up I don't know, to me it looked like Mount Everest to get up to the top to see. I did not climb those stairs, by the way. I just looked up and said, hi, God, someone else is going up there. It ain't me. But I went and I sat in silence, and something overcame me, and I drew this picture. And so when I was cleaning, I found the picture, and it had mountains and trees, and it had a labyrinth, and I kid you not, I'm gonna cry. And it said, you're gonna be a minister. Now, I did everything but draw this building. I'm telling you, it's just odd. And it didn't mean anything to me at the time, because that was so far removed from living consciously. Thank you. And there was so much to work through. And then I moved from Colorado to Arizona, and I was devastated. I was like, where am I going to finish my studies? They didn't have online and Zoom and all of those things. So there was a center 5 minutes from my house. And you finished my path there, became a practitioner. And so as I was cleaning, I found this letter, and I found the picture, and I found my study book with all of my practitioner testing and all the study questions. And I thought, oh, it'd be fun to hand them out to you and then let you quiz me. And then when I tried to do it, I did not pass, so I can't give you those cards. But my whole point about living by design is one of the things my teacher, Tom, said recently. Someone asked him a question, and he was talking about that he was unhappy and that he felt very impulsive. And Tom said there's two things that cause impulsivity in the human mind, and it's that we don't think about the future. We only think, ooh, what, that chocolate cake, or, oh, whatever the vice is. We only think about that immediate gratification. Even if it's just reacting, we do not think. We act without thinking consciously, so default. We also are looking for something on the outside world that we already have on the inside world. And those two things, Max's message, Tom's message, finding these things made me realize that I wanted to talk a little bit about what Old Holmes' idea was of default. And I really wasn't planning on telling that story and consuming my 20 minutes, but I don't know, when I was sitting there, Spirit said, yes, you will. And I promised to be heart-centered, and I try not to talk about my life too much, but this week has been exceptionally hard, and most of it's been by default. Luke fell and hit his head and had to go to the emergency room because he had a big knot back here, and then that was the week before, and then this week he was running to the front door and fell and hit his teeth on the cement, and blood was pouring out, and I'm like, I'm a failure of a mother. And I was so distraught, and I told Bill, I go, I'm just so distraught. And he goes, you're always distraught. That's fine. And I thought, okay, how can I be how can I work? You know what happened, though? There was this moment of consciousness where I could say to myself, do you want to do this unconsciously or consciously? Do you want to be strong and face this in reality and bring Luke what he needs, or do you want to be the screaming mother that's going, oh my God, there's blood everywhere? And I asked ChatGPT because I didn't know what to do. It was devastating. And it said, be calm. So, you get your wisdom wherever you get it. But my point is, we are all going through things, whether it be a mother, a father, work, relationships, community, that there are things going on. And like Max said, we can be angry about them, and we can let our thoughts control us, default. Or we can start to evaluate our thoughts and ask what's true about them. What is it that I need? And I really thought of this idea of mental equivalent popped into my head, right? So I'm going to end with these two things. When I was perusing the internet, I came across this story of this young lady who quit college and she didn't know what she was going to do. And so her dad would take her to vintage markets and she would buy vintage jewelry and she would take it apart and put it together and make these beautiful necklaces. And famous people started buying them. And she just became very popular and she blew up, and she discovered she didn't really need college because it didn't bring her joy. So then she started consciously making the necklaces and started putting effort into it, and now she's a millionaire, right? And she makes so many necklaces that she had to change her operational procedures. But my point is, when we have a desire, it comes from conscious living. And when we meet it with intention, which is faith, and action, which is love, then the universe takes care of the rest. But when fear is in the picture, we get stuck. So somebody had sent me an email and said that they liked the talk title, and that there was this situation where there was a boat and the boat never got used, and that it just kind of sat there idle. And I thought to myself, oh wow, where am I idle? And we all make decisions. I just realized in reading that and then studying for this talk that the idleness is fear of moving forward, but mostly not knowing why you're doing what you're doing consciously. Most of my decisions about my harebrained ideas of selling jewelry and joining the marketing scheme was to make money, was to support my family, but it was out of fear. I was afraid to be poor. I was afraid to suffer. I was afraid to not have money because we lived our life that way. And I didn't want to be the causation of that. And I had a really negative self-esteem. So I realized when you walk into a desire and it's from fear, now there's healthy fear, right? That motivates us. But this is the fear that you have to do it because nobody else will. And if you don't do it, everything's going to fall apart. And then your family's going to be poor and you're going to live in the street and the whole, bag lady story. I was afraid to be a bag lady. And now I'm so grateful that they're there because, we all serve our purpose. But my point about this is moving from that 2012 Tracey into the 2016 Tracey, into the 2018, 2020, that they're all iterations of surrendering the identity of me and holding it all together, and into the openness of faith and grace that it's all going to work out no matter what is out there. And this is what Max was pointing to, is that we are energetic beings and we have everything that we need. And the only thing we don't need is the story that ruminates in our mind. Because we are already love, we are already light, we are already God, we are already those things. And that's our truth. And what we believe is our truth is this. And so it gets complicated depending on the nature of your mind and how you were taught to think about things and how reactive you are. So living by design is allowing that to show itself, meeting it with love, making a different choice, and then watching the magic happen. And from there to here was 12 years. If somebody had told me it would have taken me 12 years to be a minister, I would have found a different dream, because in my mind it was going to happen very quickly. So one Saturday, I drive, I think it's Sunday. I'll just say this because I'm going to close with a story. I drive to Mile High. I call Bill and I go, there's no one in the parking lot. I think they canceled church. And he was like, Tracey, it's Saturday. I was so excited to find the truth about who I am and to live it. And it has been a long journey, releasing a lot of default. And I am still on that journey, and I am with you on that journey, and I invite you on that journey. And we can do it together. We can be a community that opens up to the light and the remembrance. And we can, most importantly, when things aren't going our way, and then we react, we can just forgive ourselves a little bit. Bill's waving the paper. We can forgive ourselves a little bit. And we can just ask, what is that there to tell us so that we can love ourselves? Little Max said, the most important thing for you to walk away with is to love yourself through your inadequacies, because no one else is going to do it for you. They are going to project their idea of love onto you. We are here to set ourselves free. And I wanted to share a little bit of my journey and just to tell you that. And I was going to read you the letter, and if you want to see it, I'd be happy to share it with you, because it was just a reminder of who I was when I didn't even know what that was. That this letter was filled with so much love, and I had even no idea. It just came out of me, and then I found it when I needed to. I love you. I'm so grateful to be here. We are on this journey together, and we are going to live by design and not default. And we're going to hold each other up, and we're going to love each other up, because as Mel says, nothing but love lives here. And when something else gets in the way, we can just gently remind each other, oh, no, no, no. No, no, no. That's not your truth. And so it is. Oh, let's just ground that in a little prayer. I just know right here, right now, that in the infinite, that these stories, this way of living, that we all have our story. We all have our miraculous discoveries, our little miracles that have brought us back to who we really are, to the highest idea of ourselves. Not in the world, but in our inner world. that we no longer give our power away. Max says being angry gives your power away and it steals your freedom. We obliterate anything like that and we replace it with the highest divine truth, that you are love, you are light, you are joy, you are magnificence, you are magnetically charged to live by conscious choice and allow that surrender for Spirit to bring you everything you desire through the givingness of itself to itself. That I stand in recognition of this truth for my life, for your life, and for anybody that you know that is suffering, that the world will toss us about. But if we stand firm like the lit candle and embody the truth of our being, then we will not be tossed about. We will meet it with love. We will identify and release anything unlike the beauty and light that we are. I cast these out into the ethers knowing that Spirit hears it because it is it, and it returns what you focus on, and we focus on love, light, beauty, joy. And on our mountain is only our desires. And when life comes to meet us, we say, not today. I choose consciously to live and embody love. And so it is.